So the first 14 days in office has seen President Trump bucking conventions and moving at a blistering pace. In the process, he has created essentially months of stories in just a matter of a couple of weeks. Perhaps caught by surprise somewhat, the media drawing some provocative conclusions about his presidency so far. Consider these headlines. McClatchy, D.C. draws comparisons to Richard Nixon, a besieged Trump. They say the latest cover of The Economist characterizes his presence in the White House as an insurgent. And regarding one of his top advisors, Time magazine features a villainous-looking Steve Bannon on the cover, with as they deem him, the, quote, great manipulator. Joined now by Kurtz, host of Media Buzz, and Fleischer. He is former White House press secretary under President George W. Bush. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have you here. I think it's fair to say that the media is sort of, drowning in a sea of stories that at sometimes are hard for all of us to keep up with. There's so much coming down the pipeline. But in terms of those headlines, Ari, take this on first. As a press secretary, would you be okay with those headlines, or would you push back?
Well, the insurgent headline is probably a pretty good one. I don't think Donald Trump would mind being called an insurgent in Washington, D.C. But, I compare this to the way Barack Obama came into office and the soft press, the easy press, the loving press that he got. Reporters wanted to believe in him. With Donald Trump, they don't like him, they don't want to believe in him, and so they leap on every little thing that goes on and try to magnify it or exaggerate it or even just get it wrong, like the Martin Luther King bust being removed from the Oval Office, to say he's doing things that are terrible, and then they have to correct themselves. It's a pattern.
Howie, he is going at such a rapid pace, this president, that in some ways, some people say, oh, you can't make the Nixon comparison. It's only been 2 weeks. But, it's sort of like dog years. I mean, it's sort of been 2 years at this point in some ways. So perhaps they're justified in making some of these conclusions based on all the activity. What do you think?
I mean, President Trump is overloading the circuits, but already the press is playing the Nixon card. I mean, that McClatchy newspaper story, comparing him to Nixon and saying he has a fortress mentality, perhaps, on the basis of one canceled trip to Milwaukee is an absurd stretch. And all of the comparisons when President Trump fired the acting attorney general for not carrying out his order, controversial to be sure, on the temporary travel ban, comparing it to Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre, during Watergate, which is a criminal investigation of the White House, not involving a previous administration's holdover, also totally erroneous. Now, we have to remember President Trump has declared war on the press, but it's almost as if the news outlets are using that as an excuse or a reason to throw the kitchen sink at him.
Yeah, I mean, he's giving them plenty to work with, and they are giving back plenty to work with, and it seems like the relationship has really been like that very much through the campaign as well. I want to go back to this Time magazine cover, Ari, that has Steve Bannon on the cover, looking villainous, and, I mean, people are starting to dig into everything that he said in all of his Breitbart years, and they do see a lot of what we're seeing from President Trump in the writings and what Steve Bannon has said over the years about immigrants and the like. So is this fair? Are you concerned about the role that he plays at the White House?
Well, I don't know Steve Bannon. I've never met him, and I never heard of him until he became famous for going to work for Donald Trump. And then when he went to the White House, and actually to the campaign, all the coverage about Islamophobic, misogynistic, anti-Semitic. Sometimes when you hear that everything is wrong with somebody, you sort of check yourself and go, there's something else going on here. They just don't like him for some reason, and they're ganging up on him, merits or no merits. And I think that's the case with Steve Bannon, best I can tell, particularly on the anti-Semitic attack. There's no evidence for it. There's nothing that supports it, but they make it anyway. And this is what I just find is the press going too far to paint people they don't like negative. They did similar things to Karl Rove, President Bush's political advisor, but you notice they never did that to Valerie Jarrett or to David Axelrod. They're really hands-off of President Obama's
Valerie
political
Jarrett got
advisors.
a fair amount of negative attention, I would say,
Mostly
over the
from
years. And in many
conservative
cases,
press,
these people are
mainstream.
they're very quiet, and they're, sort of to themselves because of their role, and they don't really want to be the person in the press. And I think that allows the press to sort of read things into their behavior that perhaps may or may not be true. Howie, I want to ask you about the leakers and the story that got out today about the president on the phone with the Prime Minister of Australia and characterized it. What do you think's going on there?
This is a revolt by the government against President Trump. I mean, some fairly senior officials, perhaps at the State Department or the White House, we don't know, gave to the Washington Post and the AP either detailed accounts or leaked partial transcripts of these tough calls with the leaders of Mexico and Australia. It is stunning to me that kind of confidential conversation involving a president would be leaked. I mean, I would publish it too. It's a fascinating story, but it means that a president can't even have an expectation of privacy when he's having these high-level secret talks. So that suggests to me that the bureaucracy is kind of rising up against him. And one quick point, Martha, during the campaign, the press completely missed the anger and frustration among all these Trump supporters. I fear that we are in danger of doing that again.
Thank you, Howie. And, you know, you look at that leak story. The White House says it did not come from them. It came from outside the White House. Very few people in that room. The Australians say it didn't come from them either. So somebody, as you point out, is trying to make the president look bad, you know, truthfully or untruthfully. It appears that that's what happened this morning with that story. So we'll see where it goes. All right, Fleischer, thank you very much. Howie Kurtz, great to see you tonight as well.
Same here, Martha.